I hadn't wanted to live in Geneva. In fact, I had decisively wished not to. But there I was. Plastic ficuses flanked the entryway of the building. The corrugated brown carpet matched the matte brown fretwork of the elevator cage. The ground floor hosted the offices of a psychiatrist and those of an iridologue, a practitioner of a branch of alternative medicine that was popularized when in 1861, a Hungarian physician noticed similar streaks of color in the eyeballs of a broken-legged man and a broken-legged owl. Our apartment was 1 story up. The bell rang. Newlywed and nearly speechless, I cracked open the door, a slab of oak with a beveled brass knob. Next to it, the landlord had installed a nameplate, giving the place a look less of a home than of a bilingual tax firm. A man stood on the landing. He was dressed in black, t-shirt, pants, tool belt. A length of cord coiled around his left shoulder. In his right hand he held a brush. Creosote darkened his face and arms, extending his sleeves to his fingernails and the underside of his palms. A red bandana was tied around his neck. He actually wore a top hat. I hesitated before pushing the door open further, unsure whether I was up against a chimney sweep or some sort of Swiss stripogram. "Bonjour," I said, exhausting approximately half of my French vocabulary. The man, remaining clothed, returned my greeting and began to explain why he was there. His words, though I couldn't understand them, jogged second-hand snatches of dialogue. Per cantonal law, as the landlord had explained to my husband, who had transmitted the command to me, we had to have our fireplace cleaned once a year. I led the chimney sweep to the living room. It was dominated by the fireplace, an antique thing in dark striated marble, with pot hooks and a pair of side ducts, whose covers hinged open like lockets. Shifting his weight onto one leg with surprising grace, the chimney sweep leaned forward and stuck his head under the mantel. He poked around for a few minutes, letting out the occasional wheeze. Coming out of the arabesque, he turned to me and began, again, to speak. On a musical level, whatever he was saying sounded cheerful, a scale-skittering ditty of le's and las. Perhaps he was admiring the condition of the damper, or welcoming me to the neighborhood. He reached into his pocket, proffering a matchbook and a disc of cork. Then he disappeared. Minutes went by as I examined his gifts. They seemed like props for a magic trick. More minutes passed. I launched into a version of rock, scissors, paper. Since the cork couldn't conceivably do anything to the matches, then the matches must be meant to light the cork. Action was required, but I feared potentially incinerating the chimney sweep, who I guessed was making some sort of inspection up on the roof. Eventually, he returned, chirping out some more instructions. I performed a repertoire of reassuring eyebrow raises and comprehending head nods. He scampered away. I still had no idea, so I lit a match, held it to the cork, and tossed it behind the grate. The pile started smoking and hissing. After a few seconds, I lost my nerve and snuffed it out. The chimney sweep resurfaced, less jolly. He had appointed an assistant who, it appeared, was actively thwarting his routine. This time he spoke in the supple, obvious tones one reserves for madwomen, especially those in possession of flammable objects. Reclaiming the half-charred piece of cork, he lit a fire and, pot-belly jiggling, sprinted back out the door. Finally, he returned and reported, I assume since we used the fireplace without incident all that winter, that everything was in order. "Au revoir," I said, trying to regain his confidence, and my standing as châtelaine of this strange, drab domain. Hello and goodbye were a pair of bookends, propping up a vast library of blank volumes, void almanacs, novels full of sentiment I couldn't apprehend. I felt as though the instruction manual to living in Switzerland had been written in invisible ink.